Hello, everybody. My name is Ariana DeBose, and I'm really thrilled to be with you today to have a beautiful, beautiful chat with my incredible friend, Brian Darcy James. Now, if you don't know Brian Darcy James, you should, because he is nominated for Best Supporting Performance for the Indie Spirit Awards this year. The role that he plays in The Cathedral. And I just recently watched it. And here's the thing about Brian. He's so accessible. He's so warm. He makes you feel, even when he's playing characters that could be considered cold. I just love this man. He's been on Broadway so many times. Some of my favorites, Shrek, Hamilton off Broadway, which we did together. More about that later. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, A Sweet Smell of Success, Titanic, Something Rotten, Time Stands Still, The Ferryman. And he is currently on Broadway playing the baker in Into the Woods. Please help me welcome my friend, Brian Darcy James.
Hi, Ariana. Thank you for that. I'm great. Thank you so much for doing this.
It's my honor. I'm so excited and proud for you. You were saying briefly that this recognition was a little bit of a surprise to you. You didn't see it coming in a way. Is that?
Yeah, it's really stunning. It's really exciting too, for the film's sake, and Ricky D'Ambrose, who's the writer and the director, and all the attention that he's getting for this film that he's made, which is extraordinary. And then to be singled out this way it's a thrill. It's my first time in a way to kind of have that kind of light being shined upon, rather than an ensemble situation. Just to have the recognition for some of the individual stuff that I've done is it's really cool.
It is really cool. And you are more than deserving. You have been in the game for a while, sir. Didn't you start in the ensemble? Am I wrong?
Oh, yeah. My first job was in the ensemble of Blood Brothers, which is a Broadway musical, and then Carousel, where Audra McDonald and Tay Diggs and myself, and where I met my wife, Jennifer.
I wish people could have seen you maybe perhaps some of you did if you were fortunate enough to see him in the off-Broadway production of Hamilton. He was our glorious King George. That was the first time I met you. And you were just the warmest, kindest, nicest guy in the room.
Oh my God! Well, I felt like I'd won the lottery. I mean, what's not to be warm about when you're in that show and just have that role to play? I mean, that was such an extraordinary time. We could spend all night talking about that,
which is interesting, since we have established that you have a tremendous theater background, and yet you are being recognized for your film work. How do you feel about the difference between mediums? It's one of my favorite questions to ask.
I don't think I approach the character differently. I do have a better sense of the process of what I need to do for myself to understand how I will function within the telling of a story through film. Whereas, if you're on stage, every night you are constantly being informed by the context of the show. So all the work that you do in rehearsal leading up to the opening night and then the run, you have from A to Z every night to kind of be in the soup and to be informed by all the other characters' wants and needs, the story itself. And so a lot of that work, it's all happening simultaneously with whatever that you're trying to craft and kind of carve out. Whereas in a film, you have to understand, or at least have a good sense of what the story is fully, so that you can have that in mind when you're doing each scene, because as everyone knows, it's piecemeal and a lot of times out of order. And so you have to understand exactly kind of what larger macro thing is happening within the storytelling that can, be present in your mind to help you tell your own story in that particular scene. So that takes a while. I mean, at least for me, it did and has. I haven't perfected it by any means, but I have a better vocabulary now. I have a better understanding of that language. And I feel much more confident in terms of what it takes to get ready to kind of take the zigzag tour of making a film as a character. That's been a learning process, and a really exciting one too, because it's fun to kind of shift gears and have to apply a different modus operandi, for
yeah. I don't think you ever truly figure it out. Every role, every movie, every set is different. You keep guessing. It's like the epic throwing paint on a wall, but you use the skills you have to meet the moment that you're in.
It's constantly letting go too, isn't it? Because you don't have the 6 weeks to kind of iron things out. You have maybe one or two tries, if it goes well enough, you get the scene, right? And so if that's the case, then you just have to kind of say, okay, well, I hope and trust that the director is seeing what he or she needs to tell the story correctly, and otherwise we just have to let it go.
I want to talk a little bit about your director, Ricky D'Ambrose. Am I saying that correctly? he's an up and coming indie director, right? And you and I had the great fortune of working with a man named Steven Spielberg in West Side Story. If you don't know, Brian here played our Officer Krupke, and he was delightful.
Ariana won an Academy Award for her work in West Side Story. Just had to make that clear.
This isn't about me. This is about you.
I don't know. That just deserved a little bell ringing there.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. What do you feel like the differences in technique or the experience, or perhaps being in the indie space, because it's the indie space, is going to feel different than working on a big budget Steven Spielberg set? But what things stick out in your mind about the process with working with Ricky?
Most people know about Steven Spielberg's expertise and how he can do it, which is just gloriously. What I was struck with Ricky, I'd never heard of Ricky DeAmbrose, and I had a crash course of kind of seeing his first feature and getting a sense of, how he approached filmmaking, which is completely unique and just very unto itself. Reading the script for the Cathedral, I thought, well, this is going to be in that vein, I think, from what I had seen in terms of his style and his approach. It just seemed another language to me. And it seemed like something that I didn't quite understand fully, but knew that he was sure-handed with how he was thinking about things, because that was reflected in the script. So it just seemed like a very wonderful opportunity to kind of get to understand and see how this person was going to tell the story. That was really exciting. So I guess, the similarities are the fact that those two filmmakers are very confident in how they approach their work. The obvious differences, of course, is that budget is definitely always an issue. And right. I think what's really cool is I think the Cathedral is also nominated for Best Feature made under $1 million, which I think is there's a particular designation for that award. I think the John Cassavetes Award, they can correct me if I'm wrong, if that's not the right filmmaker that they based that honor on. But anyway, we didn't have a lot of money. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to be very economic, yes. liberally, and also figure
like indie space is like you're constantly problem solving on a set with a director and a team and your actors too.
True. I think that's true no matter what kind of movie you're making, but probably a greater sense of urgency, when you really have to make sure that you're getting what you need. But again, I go back to the specificity of Ricky's work. And when you're working with somebody who's so exacting and knows exactly and has planned so vigorously, and rigorously, then it's easy, or it's easier, I should say, to kind of make the day and get what you need.
When I watched the Cathedral, I was really struck by it because, like you mentioned, his style is so unique unto himself. And I've never seen a movie like it. His use of, voiceover, and then it's minimalistic in a way. It is its own language, its own world, but highly effective. And his use of light, the way that he creates an emotional language with light. It's not Janusz Kaminski, you know what I mean? It's this right. other thing. But again, highly evocative of the emotions of these characters and the use of a door to storytell. I thought it was really, really fascinating.
I think it's remarkable because what he's doing, he's taking this assembly of images and things that aren't necessarily emotional or dynamic within themselves, but the accumulation of them, the collection of them as memories and as kind of snapshots of this family kind of rising and falling. I think that's the remarkable thing, because you see these little snapshots, I guess is the word, of moments in life that unto themselves are kind of unremarkable, but add them all up together, you think, oh God, it's so poignant to see how these things kind of stack up when people are doing well and people when they're not doing well, how those memories are the things that stay with you. It's really interesting. And it's all seen through the eyes of Jesse, which is basically, the cipher for Ricky, since it is semi-autobiographical.
Speaking of, I wanted to ask you more about your role in particular. You play the father, Richard Damrosch. And how did this role come about for you?
It just came through an offer through my agent, which is always really exciting.
That's always so nice.
Yeah, and just thrilling. That was great. Just kind of plopped into my lap. But yeah, there was a certain sense of like, oh, how autobiographical is this? What does semi actually mean? How semi is it? I felt that word semi was actually a big help, because it allows you to think of the character not so much as trying to represent Ricky's father. I'm sure Ricky would say there are elements of his father that are in that character, but it's not his dad per se. But the semi aspect of it was something that was helpful for me to kind of create my own character without having to kind of interview Ricky and kind of try to understand the psychology of his dad, rather than understanding the character that he had written.
But you've played a real person before in Spotlight, which I know y'all saw Spotlight. Incredible film, had a great run. Talk to me about like how did that feel, and how was it different from Richard? You know what I mean?
There is some breathing room playing someone that's based on a character of someone's life, as opposed to actually playing someone. And in the case of Spotlight, I was playing Matt Carroll, who was an actual Boston Globe reporter who was super helpful, and we were still friends. There was a huge responsibility. I think we all felt. I think it's safe for me to speak for all of us playing these incredible reporters and people, to honor them by providing an essence of that person that is close to who they are and what they achieved and all of that. So that was a different responsibility. So again, the word semi-autobiographical was very, very welcome to me, because it takes a little bit of the pressure off to say that, you are actually playing this person.
Yes, it is. I have minimal experience, but enough to agree with you. It starts in the 80s. You see a family through time. What I found so remarkable about what you did with Richard, at every moment in time, I did feel his motivations and his motives and what his best intentions were, even if they didn't quite come out the way you want. And having the luxury of a story that takes place over many years, you really got to, or at least as a viewer, I really got to connect with him, even in these snapshots. I love that Ricky just puts a tight on your face. He loves to put tight on your face, and he just let you do what you do best, which was feel and be. I thought what you were doing, while it may be considered subtle, highly effective. I want to hear from you. What words would you use to describe him? Like, did you find being in his skin, like, was there an arrogance to it? Because he's the father figure taking care of his new wife, and they have a son, and he's, asking the friend for the loan, and he's gonna pay him back, and he's doing the things. Like, it's not toxic masculinity, but I believe when we watch male characters, we put them on a pedestal and we tell them how they need to walk through the world. They need to take care of all these things, and there's so many pressures on this male entity to achieve. I really felt that from you.
I mean, that really is, because you're right. There is this kind of ideal version of the successful man in business as a patriarch, all of those roles that one has to fulfill. And if you don't measure up, there's room for a lot of drama there. And I think that's exactly what he's dealing with, is just the internal struggle of all the things that he wants to be and all the things that he is not. And being reminded now and again that he's not the thing that he wants to be, whether it's in the relationship with his family and how his wife's in-laws have more money than him, or his business not succeeding the way that he would like to, or his marriage not working out the way he wants to, or his ability to show love or express, his affection for his son. All of these things are really interesting in terms of seeing how a character can be successful sometimes, and then when they're not, how they deal with it. Isn't that the definition of character? Is like how you behave when things go wrong.
Things are going badly. It's highly relatable.
And again, to your point about seeing the span of time is also super helpful too, because it gives you a sense of understanding of this person's struggle, and it gives him a little bit more room to be understood.
I really, really agree with that. And even by the end of the film, I found myself having like conflicting feelings about the character, even with all the knowledge that you have. And I think that's part of the beauty and of the film. Yeah.
And I think the driving force of it all is family. So when you have the underpinnings of it, it's just the kind of hot coals of love, for familial love, and wanting to do the best for your children, wanting to be the best husband that you can be. And then seeing when that doesn't happen, that's so human. And that being the kind of bedrock of it all, the family story is the thing that we can relate to in one way or another. And so, that to me, I think is the important ingredient that informs all the characters, in particular Richard.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a few more questions and then I'm going to let you go. Why'd you become an actor?
My uncle Brian Kelly was an actor. He was an actor in the 60s on television on a show called Flipper. He played the father, the patriarch. I don't know if you remember this show, Ariana.
I don't remember the show, but I'm going to go YouTube that.
It's about a dolphin and a guy who lives down in Florida as a a park ranger, and he's got 2 sons, and this dolphin kind of helps him with. It sounds ridiculous, but it was a big hit. My Uncle Brian was the star of that show, and so I had this kind of front row seat to a person who was actually doing things on television. I'd see him in the summertime in Michigan, where we all grew up and where he's from, and so I had this kind of weird dynamic of knowing that my uncle was this actor, but then also knowing my Uncle Brian as my Uncle Brian. And that was always really intriguing to me, is thinking, how do you be the uncle, but then also be the actor person as well? So I think I was always, from a very early age, very interested in that. And then on top of that, my older sister by a couple of years, she was super involved with high school theater and musicals, and is a great singer and actor in her own right. She would be doing those things, and I'd be like, wow, how does she do that? So with those two, I kind of felt like I had these people saying, hey, look at this, presenting it in front of me. So those are the things that kind of made me want to explore it. And then I went to school and I studied theater at Northwestern University. And when I started acting, that's when I realized that's something I wanted to do for a profession, because I realized this is a skill that I can work on, and it just didn't seem like it would ever end in terms of what the learning curve was. So that was kind of when I decided to do it, or to try to do it professionally.
I talk a lot about joy, life, and also like finding joy in your work. And I was curious because Richard, there are few moments where you see this character express joy. So I was curious, how did you find joy in this character, or what did you find joy in regards to playing him?
I think that the easiest thing for me, as a father myself, is just the pride in one's family and the pride in.
Got a really cool kid, you guys. Just
she's pretty cool. So that kind of connection to being a father, and being someone who's raising a child and married and trying to do their best at kind of these roles, and that, again, that pride, I have that for myself, and Richard has that as well. He's got a lot of that. So that was an easy thing to kind of step into those shoes, with that as being the kind of bottom line, is like, well, this person loves his family dearly. And that was something that I could certainly relate to. So outside of the character aspect of it, just getting a chance to be in a film that was getting a chance to act. I know that sounds kind of pat, but in this case, because I was happy that I had the chance to take a chance and to try to do something that I wasn't fully sure I knew what it would be, or how it would go, or what the rules would be in terms of Ricky's vision. I knew that it was something that was really intriguing to me stylistically and artistically. So that at the time, everyone was just kind of suffocating, with their own perspective on how things were during COVID.
This movie was made during COVID?
Yeah. And it was kind of coming out of COVID, with all the challenges, just kind of getting through the day, this thing plops down in my lap. And I thought, this is such a beautiful pursuit in terms of expanding my creative desires and my creative pursuits. And so that gave me great joy, just being able to kind of have the wonderful, lucky, beautiful opportunity to actually even do it.
I was given the chance to take a chance. I love that. Oh, Brian Darcy James, you're the greatest. I really hope that to the viewership, I hope that you've gotten a better sense of who this wonderful man is. Also, he sings, just a fun fact. And when he was playing King George, he was given Elton John vibes. I'm just saying. So go on.
Oh, that's a compliment.
Oh my God. His voice is incredible. So now he's a wonderful actor, pretty darn good singer, and an even better human. Know that if you have are you kidding? I don't say things I don't mean.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. I'll say thank you.
If you have not seen The Cathedral, again, that is a Ricky D'Ambrose film, and he has a great name, really cool style. Please go watch this film. It is streaming now on MUBI. Get into it. Really, really cool. Again, my friend Brian Darcy James, nominated for Best Supporting Performance for the Indie Spirit Awards 2023.
Ariana, you're the best. Thank you so much. I love talking to you about this. Thanks. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.